well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January Legislative Coffee. For those who have not attended these in the past, how this works is we'll have our three representatives just kind of give you an update on what they're working on in the legislature right now, and the things that they're looking as we move forward through the legislature that they are going to be focused on. And then we'll open it up to the floor and people can ask questions and we'll go from there. We'd like to keep this to an hour, so about 10:50 or so I'll kind of start a countdown there, try to keep it to an hour. But I want to welcome Craig, Steve, and Jason here. And at this point I'll just turn it over to them. Thanks.
Just a reminder, when anybody might go, don't cover their mouth, that I need to look for you. Let me keep it below the lip and the look for you.
Okay.
Thanks.
On now? On now. Which one is the on button? You got the mic. I had it there. Okay, now? How about now?
Stop now?
All right. I forgot my glasses, so right now. It's not.
1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing.
There we are. All right.
Can you try not
That's
cover
it.
your lips?
Yes. And that's what I was hoping, because when I tested, I'm like, I want to make sure it hears me if I hold it away. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming in. It's a wonderful sign to show people to see the interest in the beginning of the legislative session. We started Monday, we finished the first week. The first week, well, I'm going to start with an introduction with the camera. We may have some new faces here. My name is Jason Schultz. I serve as Senator of Senate District 6. To know the district you're in, Senate-wise, it is all of Ida, Crawford, and Shelby, and then Carroll and Audubon, and then 2 townships that touch Avoca in Potawatomi County. So it's nice, it's pretty nice. It's not laid out 5 counties in a row. It's a nice, dense district. So I'm a farmer in Ida Grove. My wife and I live in Schleswig. We have one daughter married and working in Denison, and the other is going to graduate Iowa State here in May. Yeah, in May. So that's the family. And I have been myself assigned, so I am the Judiciary Chair in the Senate this year. My other committees are Commerce, State Government, Workforce, and Ways. Those are the same committees I've been on before. I have previously chaired Commerce, State Government, and Workforce. So it's a very comfortable set of committees, and I'm very happy with all the importance and the topics that come through those, so I can come back, represent your interests, and then come back and report on them. So the first week of session is a pomp and circumstance plus the mechanism of getting committees started and bills flowing. Just like any machine, you got to prime the pump and get things started before you've got daily production. So I'll start with the pomp and circumstance. We form the legislature, we swear the new members in. We start having the annual speeches. The 3 speeches we have annually are the governor, the Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court, and the National Guard General. The news always covers the governor the most, but both of us being judiciary chairs, we're very interested in the Chief Justice. My personal favorite, though, I'm so proud of our National Guard, and I am so happy that we've gone from year after year of war stories, of deployments and loss of our citizens to what they're doing now. It's assisting with floods, training deployments. The tankers are traveling the globe, assisting the active duty forces, and they're doing just a fantastic job. The governor's speech, I was just going to cover now before moving this on. The governor started, and I'd like to read them because I think it's a really good way to kind of set to set the base on where we are as Iowa. The governor started out with national rankings. I like to say these are not gospel truths. These are not etched in stone. They can be, so I've had people say, well, that's just one magazine said that. I get that, but they have the same formula year after year. We didn't used to be on any of these lists 10 years ago. So I look at them to see, are we doing right, are we doing wrong, how is Iowa doing? So she had us listed, we're the #1 state for retirement. Number 1 for millennial home ownership, so we've got the senior retireds, we have the new entering the workforce. 3rd year in a row, number 1 state for fiscal responsibility, and 2nd in cost of living, and 3rd for opportunity. That's a pretty good way to be. We didn't used to be on any of these in a notable manner. We are also 4th in healthcare and educational choice, and we're ranked the 6th best state overall. So I'm pretty proud of what the last 8 years has done. It's been a big, big turnaround. The last couple here, Iowa is ranked 5th in the country for 4-year-old preschool access, something that we did work on, and ranked number 1 for lowest healthcare cost with the 4th best healthcare system overall. We ranked 9th for healthcare access, and when it comes to women's health, we ranked 14th in the nation and have been named the 11th best state to have a baby. So you can see we're starting to get to double-digit rankings there. That means there's some work to do, but we are on the top end, the top quartile, I'll say. Things are going pretty good, and we're going to continue to try to make them better. And I think once, my experience is, as a state, when you get that foundation laid, things, you make your own luck, I guess I'll say. Coaches like to tell a team, when you're already in a good spot, it's easier to get better, and it's harder for other folks to catch up. So I'm pretty happy with that. So with that, the mechanics, we're just getting subcommittees and committees formed, and the first subcommittees are being held, so the pipeline is getting ranked. With that, I'll pass it on.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone here. See a lot of familiar faces. That's always fun. I'm State Representative Stephen Holt. I live in Denison, Iowa. I'm married. My wife's a school teacher at Denison High School. We have 5 kids. They're all in various places these days. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I spent 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, about 3.5 years in law enforcement. I was a small business owner for about 18 years. I ran through the Iowa House in, I believe it was 2014, and began serving in 2015, so I'm starting my 6th term. I've chaired the House Judiciary Committee. Not my first time, this is I think my 3rd or 4th time doing that. I'm also in public safety, higher education, government oversight, and I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. As far as priorities this year, there'll be others coming out as we go along, but I will just list some of the priorities. Obviously, there's a lot of things that will be going on, but some of the ones that come to mind, I'm sure you've heard about it in the media, will be property tax relief. There's going to be a lot of discussion and see where we can get on property tax relief. As all of us knock doors this election cycle, and what I've heard for a number of years is people, particularly on fixed incomes, that say to me it was really great. Thank you for ending taxes on retirement income, and thank you for lowering the top tax rate to 3.8% and all the things that you've done on taxes, but what are you going to do about my property taxes, because I'm not going to be able to stay in my home. So it's something that we have to address. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I was moved from appropriations to Ways and Means this year, where that property tax bill will be considered. So we'll see where that goes. I'm going to do my best to stay in contact with all of our local county supervisors as that legislation moves through and we end up seeing what it looks like. Next priority for me, and these are in no particular order, but eminent domain continues to be a huge issue in this district and across the state of Iowa. Right now, the CO2 pipeline situation is clearly in the courts because we tried several times. We passed legislation in the House, we're unable to move it in the Senate. So the lawsuits now are probably going to decide what happens with the CO2 pipeline. I remain confident that the constitutional requirement for public use was not met by the Summit CO2 pipelines, and I believe that the Supreme Court, my prayer is that the Supreme Court will say that the Iowa Utilities Commission did not have the constitutional or statutory authority to grant that eminent domain. That's why I'm one of 30 or so legislators that filed a lawsuit against the Iowa Utilities Commission on that issue. So we'll see where that goes. But we need to do eminent domain legislation for the future because there are going to be more and more energy projects that are going to come through this state. We need to protect landowners. I think it's already pretty clear, but obviously, apparently it isn't clear enough. And so we need to do comprehensive eminent domain reform in our code to address this issue so we can protect our property owners. And that's something that a number of us are working on right now. I'm also, as you heard me say, I'm on House Government Oversight. I think we're going to be taking a really hard look in House Government Oversight at the Iowa Utilities Commission and how they treated landowners and what the process was when they moved through to grant eminent domain for the Summit pipeline, because we've heard a lot of very disturbing things from landowners and things that took place during these hearings. We're going to be taking a good hard look at that, I believe, on the House Government Oversight Committee. You'll find Representative Charlie Thompson is chair of that committee, who has been one of the leaders on this issue. So if you take a look at how the makeup is of that House Government Oversight Committee and who is on that, you will notice a number of fighters against the use of eminent domain for the pipeline, so that can kind of clue you in as to what the expectation is that committee is going to be looking into. Another issue that I'm going to be working on is anti-SLAPP legislation. That stands for strategic lawsuit against public participation. What that is the Carroll newspaper a few years ago was sued almost into bankruptcy for doing the right thing, reporting a story that should have been reported. What this legislation would enable is a judge early on to identify a lawsuit type such as this, trying to silence an issue such as this, and would allow the judge to stop it early and then grant reasonable attorney fees would have to be paid for the person that files such a lawsuit. It's very important legislation. I've been trying to get done for a number of years. We'll continue to work on that. I'm on the Higher Education Committee. That was a newly formed committee. We have directed the region universities to do certain things, such as get rid of their DEI programs. We are not going to allow them to simply rename those programs and continue to do it. So one of the things the Higher Education Committee will be looking at is making sure that the laws we passed are being followed, and also that taxpayers are getting the most bang for their buck possible. And we will continue, I will continue, as my fellow legislators will, to continue to destroy the woke lyme virus in the state of Iowa. Florida and Iowa is where woke goes to die, and that's going to continue to be the case. So with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Williams. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Craig Williams from Manning, Iowa. And if you're wondering why there's three of us up here, because of the redistricting and the remapping from 2021 put Shelby County into an interesting situation of having it divided up. So if you take Shelby County and you turn an L on its head and take another L and turn it backwards, this is Steve and this is me, right? So everything west of Harlan, including Harlan, is Steve's and north, and everything south and east of that is my district, part of House District 11. So House District 11 has all of Carroll County, all of Audubon County, that southeast L shape of Shelby County, and a little sliver out of Pottawatomie County going into Avoca. So, again, from Manning, Iowa, married for, this will be 45 years, anyway, something like that. I usually say, been happily married for 40. We won't talk about those other years. Right, but I've got two kids that are grown and gone, and they have kids of their own, so I have 6 grandchildren that are 6 years old and under. It's fantastic to have grandkids. We should have had those first. It would have been a lot better. I'm kidding. I had great kids. I always say that I had better kids than my dad did, and I mean that sincerely. If I had to have me, it would have been a real problem for us. So I started my business career out in IT. I was a software developer back in the 80s, where absolutely nothing I ever did is around anymore. It's gone. But then I got into agriculture. I ran seed companies for a number of years. I was with Gar Seed Company back in the early days, and then I was director of operations for Channel Bio before Monsanto acquired it. And then I ran a division of Dow AgriSciences called Renzi Seeds up in Carroll, Iowa. So I've been in agriculture for 30-some years. The last 10 years, I've been an independent market research consultant in agriculture. So I work with companies around the world on bringing new products into agriculture. I spend my days talking to farmers across the country about what's going on in their world and how best to address them when a new product comes to light. Committee-wise, so I'm back up, because I was a state senator for a couple of years in 2020 to 2022, and then when we redistricted, Jason Schultz and I landed right on top of each other. And I just made the decision that we could both spend an awful lot of money, and one of us just going to walk away upset at the end of the day. Wasn't going to be worthwhile, so I backed out, and Jason is your senator, and he still owes me for that. So, I was out for 2 years. I really miss it. The things that, this is weird about me, I know, among other weird things about me. I read an awful lot. I don't read books as much as in fact, I don't read books at all. I read law, I read contracts, I read things of that nature. So I'm very proud when I was in the Senate that I never voted on a bill that I hadn't personally read from end to end. Doesn't mean you always understand it, right? Reading and comprehension aren't exactly the same thing. But I did my best to understand it and ask questions. And one of the fun things in the House and the Senate is going into caucus before you get to vote on something. You can discuss what's in this bill. And I always have my hand up with, can you explain paragraph 3 on page 4 to me? Why are we doing that? So I don't know if I can do that in the House or not. I'm going to try awfully hard, but there's an awful lot more bills that go through the House than go through the Senate. There's probably 2,400 bills a year that get presented to the legislature, and only about 200 of them make it to the end of the thing. So reading all 2,200 of them is a fool's errand. I'll wait until we get closer to the end to make sure I understand those. But that's my goal, is to try to make sure that I'm completely read up on all of them before we vote on them. Thankfully, I wasn't in there this last time around when that major bill of reorganization of the state came through, because that was a long, that would have taken me a while. I don't think I could have gotten it done in a couple days. Committee-wise, I'm on the Environmental Protection Committee, which is an interesting place for me with my life in agriculture. I'm also on Judiciary. That's kind of interesting as well. You've got 3 members of the Judiciary here. That gives us an oversized, overweighted maybe measurement of that committee. And these 2 guys are actually leading both of those, so I'm very happy to be on that committee. Local government, I'm vice chair of local government, which means when these property tax changes come through Ways and Means, it'll be my rear end that gets chewed by the supervisors and the city leaders for what changes they're going to want to make. Lastly, I'm on the Transportation Committee. I am very confident hands-free will get through transportation this year and will become law before the end of this session. Now, my opinion on that, $6 to get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but that's my opinion at this point. I'm also on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Appropriations Committee. So far, so the first week was a lot of pomp and circumstances, has already been mentioned, with the governor and the state of the judiciary, led by our Supreme Court Justice, who's from Harlan, which I think is fantastic, and then the state of the Guard. I've gotten 5 subcommittee assignments so far, all from the judiciary, because this man runs a tight ship and he hands them out. But I've only knew about 1 of them. I just found out about 4 of them, so I got to start reading. But that's it for me. Thank you for being here. I will say I am a strong conservative Republican, but I want to.
Don't stand up.
Okay. Sorry. But I have had some of the most fantastic conversations with people on the other side of the aisle, and we'll listen. I mean, if you got something you want to tell me, and we might not agree on it, but I'm certainly here to listen. I would just like to keep it civilized. There's been sometimes that they were uncivilized conversations, and they just get ended quickly. So everybody's entitled to their point of view, and I'm here to listen and try to do my best to represent you. So thank you.
Now, some of you folks.
Carol, we're not going to be able to have both microphones on at the same time. Oh, good.
Get it off?
It's off. All right.
Sorry.
Okay. That's way too loud. You got it?
There.
There, a little bit lower even. There we go. There we go. So we will open the floor to questions, and I will give Debbie the microphone to be able to pass it around. Because I kind of have extra seats next to me that weren't there when I first sat down. So, and we'll open it up.
question. My husband asked me to ask you a question. You want to know for me to ask you a question. The first part about John Deere, and I'm sure you're familiar about John Deere, what he was doing with it. First question is that what is the status of the agreement, understanding between John Deere and farmers regarding the software release for the right to repair machinery? You know anything about that?
Turn your mic on. Here.
Just talk about it.
Yes, just talk to
Just
the.
talk about it. Just talk about
You just talk loud. Just talk loud. That's okay.
Okay, so the last that I heard on that agreement with John Deere is that you still have the right to repairs. This is what she's asking about, is the right to repairs. So John Deere had said, well, our tractors are no longer just a piece of equipment. Now there's software in it and things of that nature. You no longer, even though you're buying equipment from us, you no longer have the right to repair that equipment. You have to bring it into a John Deere dealership to a certain person, a certain company to do that. And the last I heard was that you still have that right to repair that equipment, but if there's any lawsuits against John Deere on some things, that thing goes away and you no longer have that right to repair. I think it's on fragile ground, honestly. Personally, I think you should have the right to repair anything that you acquire. That's my opinion. I've also been a software developer, and I understand that other side of it, that you can't go in and manipulate their software. That is intellectual property that they need to maintain, and they don't want that intellectual property going off to China or off to some of their competitors. So there's that side of it, but I'm on the farmer side of this, being able to repair their own equipment.
I'm with Representative Williams, and it actually goes beyond John Deere too. This right to repair has been an issue for the last few years with companies saying these things are proprietary, they don't want you, but I'm with Representative Williams. I think that you should have the right to repair, so I will support the legislation depending on how it looks. Obviously, I've seen the details, but I'm with you.
I'm with them. There's a middle ground here somewhere, because what we're dealing with mostly is non-John Deere repair shops, not necessarily farmers.
Right.
I'm not gonna be able to mess with the tractor anyway. I don't own a tractor that has a computer in it, so, but at some point, John Deere is gonna have to understand they're gonna lose the issue, I believe, if I had to put forward. And they're gonna have to bend over backwards to provide, if they wanna protect their intellectual property, it's gonna be on them to provide what the computer and their software can tell the repair shop, and then get out of the way. I get their intellectual property claim, but at the same point, this is on them. You own the tractor, you should be able to hire somebody to fix it.
So you're stating that you can't work on an agreement between them two?
I didn't understand.
Okay. Do you hear me with this?
No, I'm hard of hearing too.
Okay.
Me too.
Well, I'm trying to say that, are you guys been able to work on and try to solve the problem between they own what the computer and the farmer have a right to work, fix their own? Can you work on that issue?
We've had bills before in the past. We never found a resolution. At some point, I think this is gonna have to get tense enough that John Deere comes in and says, we're gonna give. Because right now, they just put up a stone wall and say absolutely not, and we're not close enough in votes to go one way or the other. So it's gonna have to fester for a little bit, I'm afraid.
Okay. One last question related to John Deere. My husband wants to know, what can be done about John Deere moving to Mexico? Or why not stay in United States? And you hear about that, they're planning to move to Mexico, they don't want to take money.
Well, I think we do live in a free country, and I think a business has a right to do what they want to do, but I also think the President-elect Trump, thank God, who will be in office in a few days, is going to do some things that are going to definitely discourage that type of thing from happening. So we'll see where it goes.
I don't know again that all of this is true. I'm only telling you what I've asked and been told. The lobbyist for John Deere is actually a farm girl from Cass County, right down here. Stacy is her name. I saw her behind the house when I was going to a meeting, And to some extent, this is a community of its own where you get to know people and away from. So I just asked her, how are you doing? I mean, personally, she's a neighbor down here, county by county. How are you doing? I mean, John Deere made a controversial decision. Soon-to-be President Trump made a controversial answer. She's caught in the middle representing one of the controversial sides, and she's a conservative. So how are you doing? And she said, it was tough. I mean, it was pretty vitriolic there in the beginning, but she tells me that what a lot of people don't understand is they're not really moving everything out of what we think they're moving. They're still going to have production in the plants. There are some products that are going to Mexico, but she claims the layoffs that we know about that are real are not because they removed all the production and went to Mexico. They're layoffs because nobody can afford John Deere equipment right now. I mean, so it's a slowdown in production. She said, but it happened at exactly the same time that they moved a product line to Mexico. I'm not a defender of John Deere on this. I don't like anybody moving to Mexico. But there's more. There's always more to the story. But I found that out by simply worrying about another human being, and I think it's a pretty good human being. And it was tough. That's what I know about it, is what we're seeing immediately is the effect of corn prices and John Deere prices. One's down, one's way up.
Let me touch on that just for a second, because I was talking to a farmer in Indiana just last week, and he was telling me about a piece of equipment that he wanted. He's a John Deere guy. He said that piece of equipment was going to be $450,000 2 years ago, and he decided not to buy it. The same piece of equipment today was $650,000. So, I mean, we're talking about real money. The legislature can only do so many things to manipulate this. The strongest voice is the consumer. And so when the consumers push back on price and push back on, I'm not buying it from you if it's being produced in another country, that has way more impact than these three guys could ever possibly have on that. So you need to push back. And it's probably that pushback though on the price that's causing them to think about moving to Mexico to begin with. So it's a weird dynamic.
So not to talk between money and not to keep a John Deere from moving to Mexico. That they try to balance between the two.
Hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay.
But if I have a question, I can get it to you.
I think I'll need the mic. Check over here, all right? I'm Bryce Shaven, Shelby County Supervisor. Steve and Jason and I, we share the same barber. So. We get our money for it.
Not July.
No, but of course, the thing that's really weighing on the supervisors now is House File 718 that happened last year, 2 years ago. After all the figures are in this year, we have 2.5% increase in our general fund. We're barely going to get by with just raises this year. We all know everything's going up in price. Something's going to have to give. We have to fund an ambulance service. We have to fund the sheriffs. We have 950 miles of county road to maintain. The courthouse, all the documents there. There's just tons of other stuff that's important that we need to keep up, and we can't do it at 2.5%. It just doesn't work. So when you're doing new legislation, just think of us down here trying to make all this balance. The unfunded mandates, the last one that I can think of was back in blue. He threw several $1,000s of mandates at us, so we had to come up with that money from somewhere. So just think of that when you guys are making new legislation. We need to keep the count going around here. So another thing, Medicaid funding. Medicaid funding, if you guys could raise that, it would help us a lot. And because of two reasons, our ambulance service uses the revenue from their runs to operate. Medicaid right now does not pay much for ambulance service. We almost go backwards.
Medicaid or Medicare?
I'm sorry, it's Medicaid, it says from the ISAC.
That was federal.
Okay, Medicare.
Medicare is state.
There you go, Medicare, sorry, they have Medicaid written down.
And maybe it is Medicare.
Okay, anyway, at any rate, if you guys could it all trickles down. And one last thing, the I Will conservation funding was passed by the whole state of Iowa at 63% back in 2010. That funding alone would help our conservation board with $100,000. That would be huge for us. The people want it, so why not make it happen? That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, if any of you there was really a good letter in the Des Moines Register last week from Waukees city manager. And it was about property taxes. And most of you probably know, but maybe some of you don't know, that when you pay your property taxes, it gets split 3 ways. It gets split between the county, the school district, and the city. So as an example, what Waukee city manager put in is, a lot of people don't realize that of that property tax, Waukee only gets 37% of that money. And they've got to use that money to maintain their streets, keep their police, keep their ambulance, do their sewers, do all the work that a city has to do. So just, when you're talking about property taxes, just keep that in mind, that you're actually supporting 3 primary entities in your community. It doesn't all just go to the city or all just go to the county.
Hi, I'm Julie Kaufman, resident here in this county, and there's several of us here who are directly impacted by the CO2 pipeline that's proposed to come through, and several of us are here that are a lot more eloquent than I am, but I know that it's in the courts right now, but they're mostly concerned just with the economic part of it. They seem to think, Summit wants them to believe that they're going to make more money for Iowa, and so that's all it's about. And we keep saying, well, it's about safety too. And they say, well, we don't address that part. That's FEMA or PHMSA or whatever. But the safety issue, it's a national security issue as far as I'm concerned. Everybody knows where these pipelines go. Google your map and you can see where they go. This is a toxic gas. If it's a leak or a rupture, it happened in Mississippi. Hundreds of people were evacuated, and it kills people if the gas, if it escapes. It's going to be in our backyards, a lot of us, and we don't want it. This is our land. We're fortunate. We have 4th generation farmers on our land, and I don't care if you just bought it yesterday. It's your land, and people have a right to be safe in their own homes. And this is a big issue, and not only the safety issue, it's the property rights. It's like, if they can take your land, they want our land and our taxes for their private property. This is a private company wanting to use our land and our taxes so they can make big money from these Q45, whatever they are. It's about carbon tax credits. I don't understand it all, but I understand enough to know that it just stinks. It's like they say, well, we've invested all this money, but so have we over generations. Generations of our family and other families have invested in, and they say, well, it's about the environment. But it's not. They will ruin the environment. And that's my 2 cents, but we appreciate what you are trying to do, but more needs to be done. And we are the squeaky wheels because we aren't going to let it go. We're
not going to let it go either. I got to tell you, I could agree with you more on everything you said, 100%. There's also an issue you didn't bring up, which is water. This project is going to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of gallons of water. We're already in a drought situation. So you've got the water, you've got the safety issues, you've got the fact that you're taking land away from people. You'll be able to use the top of the land, but nonetheless, they're taking that land and all the safety implications and all the water implications, and it's going to affect the yield, and you're worried about the safety. And so all of these issues, one of the reasons we filed in federal and state court, the legislators, 30 legislators that have filed a lawsuit against the Iowa Utilities Commission, fighting their decision to grant eminent domain for the CO2 pipelines. The reason we filed in federal court also is because of a case called Kelo versus New London, which some years ago they just destroyed property rights in the United States with that ruling. It was a liberal Supreme Court. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor wrote an excellent dissent to that. Our Iowa Supreme Court in some decisions had made clear that they sided with Sandra Day O'Connor when they look at property rights. So we believe we have an excellent opportunity to and pray that the Iowa Supreme Court will find that they did not constitutionally have the authority to grant eminent domain. We also believe that it could be a case that could get up to the federal U.S. Supreme Court and overturn Kelo versus New London. So that is where we're fighting right now, because, and I hate to say this because it breaks my heart, but the train has left the station as far as legislation that we can do now to stop this, because they've already granted the use of eminent domain. Anything we pass right now, if we tried to make it retroactive, would likely not be found constitutional, because when you try to retroactive things, courts do not look favorably upon that. So that's why we filed a lawsuit, and that's why we're going to have hearings before the Iowa Utilities, we're going to have hearings in the House Government Oversight Committee to look into how they conducted those hearings, and because we think there's a lot of serious questions that need to be asked, and hopefully that will also give us some insight on the changes we need to make as far as eminent domain laws are concerned. So I could not agree with you more. I suspect these two could not agree with you more either. And I'll stop talking, but we're continuing to do everything we can, but now we're fighting in the courts because there's not much more we can do in the legislature with the CO2 pipeline. We can do things for the future, but not with the pipeline.
Representative Holtz, I would like to ask too about Governor Reynolds, right here.
Oh, sorry.
Why has she not spoken out about, we can't even get a meeting with her. It's like she doesn't care about our, and you can take this to her and say I mean, in Iowa, I think it was 70% or maybe higher
78%.
are against eminent domain for private gain, which is exactly what this is.
Several years ago, when Jason Schultz and I attended an early meeting where the room was full of people concerned about this pipeline, we took pictures. I took pictures and sent them to Governor Reynolds. I have had conversations with Governor Reynolds constantly. I cannot speak for why, other than what her public statements are, is that, she's concerned about ethanol, she's concerned about the future of ethanol. She has said she didn't want to take a side on the issue. I can only speak for myself and say that I believe that the right and wrong here is very, very clear. And that's where I'm going to fight.
I'm fine. I'm told I talk too loud.
I got a question for all three of you gentlemen. On the federal level, when it comes to term limits, it's probably obvious nothing's going to happen at the top. What can individual states, say like Iowa, do to impose term limits on their congresspeople that are going to Washington, or your senators? Have to become a grassroots effort can states do something?
There is a mechanism for the states to start a constitutional amendment. And that would be the grassroots version, is for us to file a joint resolution and be the first state to start. There are efforts out there.
I mean, you hear people talking a lot this last year. I mean, they get in there and all of a sudden outside influences take over.
And suddenly they have portfolios of billions of dollars.
I mean, I like Steve King. He got voted out. Randy Feenstra seems to be doing a good job. Chuck Grassley, I like what he's done, but it's like, come on. At the state level, would it give more younger people maybe an interest, to consider?
If the state had term limits?
Yeah. Or if the state enacted term limits on their people that go to Washington.
Okay, so here's we can't stop them from running. Yeah, that's unconstitutional.
But I mean, put it on ballot as a voting issue for each state.
The mechanism for that actually brings a huge, I'm not gonna call it toxic, because that's it. It's the convention of states that has the Republican Party in a civil war right now.
Right.
So it would be us filing a joint resolution to call a convention of the states to change the Constitution from the ground up to them. And there's actually multiple efforts to do that. And we have, unfortunately, this toxic family fight in the Republican Party among conservatives. On one side, the one-liner is, the problem isn't the Constitution, it's nobody reads the Constitution, leave it alone. And on the other side, people say that the founders gave us a mechanism to change to rein in the federal government by changing the Constitution and putting them back in. So there is a mechanism. They're trying it isn't working.
And there's huge and deep-seated fears about a runaway convention.
yeah.
That if we called a convention, it could get away from us and they could go after the Second Amendment, they could go after. So it's just a huge argument and within the Republican Party whether that's a good idea or not. I would also just mention, the other argument against term limits is that, every 2 years you can vote us out. Every 4 years you can vote Senator Schultz out. Every 2 years you can vote us out. That is a term limit. I mean, voters are deciding whether to keep these people in or not, okay? So we already have sort of term limits that people get to decide. And people are defeated. And some people go on forever, like Nancy Pelosi or whatever. And we all, a lot of us go, good Lord, why is she there? But those people wanted her there. They voted for her, for her district. So those are the two counter arguments. I understand the concern about term limits, but that's the counter argument to it.
I'll say two things. The self-imposed term limits are silly. When somebody says, I'm only going to run for two terms, if everybody else is going to run for 10 terms around them, they're never going to get seniority, they're never going to get in a position to actually work for you. So the Convention of States thing, there's 3 issues that are on the Convention of States, and I can get behind each of those 3. But the Convention of States itself, I think, is fraught with some peril that they don't quite understand yet, and I'm sure I'll get all kinds of hate mail for saying that now. But I've been asked by the Convention of States people, what will convince you to get on board? And I said, a Supreme Court ruling that says that you can have a convention with only 3 issues on it. Outside of that, I'm not sure that that's possible. So someone will have to convince me otherwise, I guess.
Yes, and just a couple of comments related to the pipeline. Obviously appreciate what you're doing in relation to that, but just keep in mind that if this pipeline goes through the farmer's land, the farmer cannot get liability insurance. So if something happens and ruptures and causes loss to life, it is going to be the farmer that is going to lose their land, their livelihood. My mom just turned 104. We had the blessing to take her to the state fair in Iowa in August to receive her Century Farm Award. And she just looks at me and she just says, why is the government doing this to me? And it's hard to explain that. In relation to running for office, it seems so much like it's whoever has the biggest purse string and the most money is the one that gets elected. And you look at even our whole presidential election, whoever has the most money, and I had mentioned this at a meeting with Joni Ernst, we have that if you have a felony charge on your record, you are not allowed to vote. We need a law that says if you have a felony record, you're not allowed to run for office. That's just my done.
So my comment regarding the term limits, I'm on the fence on that because, yeah, we have the bad actors that we feel are in there too long, but we also have the good ones. And so I would hate to cut the good people off and cut their term short when we need them. I think it's a grassroots effort that we need to educate our neighbors on being smart voters. Educate them on what's going on, what the policies are, what we're voting on, what the laws are, what our legislators are actually doing for us, and get people more involved and get people to be smart voters so that when we have people that are in there too long that need to be voted out, that we can do that. So I think we need just to take it upon ourselves to help educate those around us to help with that.
Question?
Yeah, can I go real quick?
Yeah.
Shannon Bloom, Harrison County REC CEO. Just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the energy sector. I know they're wanting to bring this bill to, I haven't seen the verbiage on everything yet, but they're kind of attacking our service territories at an REC. So we, as an REC, I used to work here at Nishnabotna in Harlan. Now I'm currently over at Harrison County, but they're directly going to affect the rural communities of Iowa by going into our service territory laws that we have existing that we've worked really, really hard to get. Some of the investor-owned utilities are attacking this to try to get what we're finally seeing in the rural communities where we built this infrastructure. We've worked on this for a very, very long time and trying to build it up so we can serve power to the rural areas. But now we're starting to see these commercial applications come into play where we're finally starting to gain some of this and densify some of our service territories. So my question to you guys is how can we fight this to not have this happen? Because we, in the future, and I don't think, and I respect Governor Reynolds, I think she's doing a wonderful job. I just don't think she sees the ramifications that are coming in the future if this happens.
You're talking about right of first refusal, right?
No, this is a little different. Service territory are boundaries where if you come into this area, that's what we serve, that's who we are. So if we're in that area, our infrastructure is built to be able to serve those communities, serve those areas that the government or that the investor owners didn't want to invest that in back in the 30s. That's where the RECs and cooperatives came from, is to be able to serve that member at the end of the line. They're getting into our service territories now where they're starting to say, for an economic impact, we want these investor owners want to serve these entities that we're finally getting to be able to socialize some of our costs to be able to gain some of these commercial properties to help out the members at the end of the line. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? What do you guys think? How can we stop this?
I am all for keeping the service territories. And the rationale is just simply, if it wasn't for RECs, we wouldn't have lights on gravel roads. The cities, so in the beginning, when we started putting up power lines and turning on lights, the territory that RECs serve, my understanding, is where the commercial companies, which there were hardly any, they couldn't afford to go out there and build the infrastructure. And the municipals are like, why would we go out there? You're just city limits. So RECs, co-ops were created to do it. And that was the answer, and it worked. And it is more expensive to be on an REC line because you have fewer meters per mile. You spread the costs over fewer people. If we allow municipal or commercial, American or Alliant, to jump in and grab a profitable piece of your territory, because now it's profitable, well, that would be dishonest with the beginning, of the intent of the system. And then that would mean everybody else on that gravel road pays more to cover the infrastructure.
Exactly.
Because
Then you're talking about building the same infrastructure that's already currently there. We already have a problem about, and not in the Midwest so much, but in other areas, trying to serve these other entities with the power cost the way they are. We're trying to build our infrastructure and strengthen our infrastructure. And right now, I mean, we're going to be fighting to be able to use our current infrastructure to its utmost potential because we have these commercial properties in our area. We're built for it. We're ready for it. We can serve it. The economic impact that she's talking about is short term. I mean, we're thinking long term. I want to say 5 years from now, the people that are working in those industries that they're trying to bring to our area are the people that are going to be affected. The power line costs are going to be driven up just because of that in it. So we serve 2/3 of the state in the rural community. So we want to make sure we fight that as best we can so we can maintain costs the way they are and be able to start getting on that other end of it where we can get cost affordable for the rural communities.
So I expect a bill, but I need,
We haven't seen the verbiage yet.
before I say anything, I need to see what they try to do to offset, to cover your side of it. I assume they're going to say that they did this to protect RECs. I need to see what they say. And then I'll be in touch and find out what's up.
I do not support breaking service territories, absolutely do not. I understand. People want to talk about free market. Oh, let's set the free market, it'll drive down energy prices, yada, yada, yada. It's not how it's going to work because you guys have so many miles between your customers. And if they begin to be able to come in and cherry pick away, you know, these things that could make it somewhat profitable or make you be able to pay the bills, then RECs are screwed. So there's no way I'm going to support breaking those service territories.
I just have a couple comments real quick, and yeah, we're gonna go back to the pipeline for a second.
That's
As far as eminent domain, I hope that this is not gonna be a last ditch effort again this year, especially on the Senate side, sorry.
No, I
That's where it's been. This is year 4, so please don't wait till the last second on the second funnel, because it doesn't work. It just, nothing comes out of the subcommittee, or it comes out of subcommittee, but it never hits committee. I'm not sure how many people are aware that they are thinking about sequestration wells in Iowa. So we'll be a dumping ground for CO2, which means they will put it underneath the aquifers, and then when it leaks, our water will be, yeah, it'll be poison, basically. Those wells are leaking in Illinois. I think they're 3 years old, and they're already leaking in Illinois. So we don't definitely want them around here, and I think they're drilling a test well in Powell County. So how far away is Powell County from Shelby County? 3.36 billion gallons of water per year is what they want. It's not millions, it's billions. And I think that was the figure before they added navigators wells, so, or ethanol plants. And I'm not against ethanol plant, don't get me wrong. The farmer needs a market, and this has been one of them for them. But a farmer can lower carbon intensity themselves, and they know they can do it, and they can collect 45Z if it was just a little more profitable for them to plant, you know, do crops in the cover crops, or to, I mean, most of us do no-till anyway. I think Shelby County's like 90-something% no-till. So, and that's what worries a lot of us that have these farms that Summit wants to go through. Decades of no-till, and all of a sudden we're going to have big erosion problems, big erosion problems. And then, you know, you went through, I was this, I was that. Iowa is second in the nation for cancer. There needs to be something looked into as far as why. Is it pesticides? Is it insecticides? What the heck's going on with that? And then I saw a not interesting report the other day. By 2050, 2 out of 5 people will have Alzheimer's. That, I mean, look in this room. You can just say, okay, those 5 right there, 2 of you are going to have Alzheimer's. That's scary. There's got to be something that we need to look into as to why it's getting so bad, and Iowa has their share of Alzheimer's patients. So thank you very much.
To give credit to the governor, she did announce it, or, you know, why are we so high on the cancer list? There's going to be money spent, studies done to figure out what is going on. Is it the pesticides? Is it the chemicals they're farming?
Is it drinking beer?
What is it? And then,
Yeah, we talked about alcohol.
Yeah.
Because we're also ranking very poorly on bench drinking.
Yeah, we're ranking high on alcohol consumption, and alcohol is not the cause of cancer, so isn't that? I mean, who knows?
She is addressing that. I was glad to hear that.
If you got the cancer thing in Kentucky's number 1. Illinois is not, but we don't use any more pesticides or insecticides than Illinois does. So why is there a difference? We are awful high on radon.
Radon.
Radon gas might be the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but we definitely need to study why before we jump to the conclusion of how to fix it, which is what the government typically does. Let's fix the problem before we know what it is.
Jared.
So we're at the 5-minute warning, folks.
Last question.
So one of the big things in the rural areas is EMS funding and how to fund it. Property taxes is the way to go. We need to look at a sales tax increase to do that. But to look at the sales tax increase, we need to look at getting rid of the 3/8 cent that's tied to the DNR and keep them from buying land to add to the park system that they already can't maintain. How do you envision being able to do that? To be able to do sales tax is the fairest way to support EMS statewide. It puts the money in the system where it's being utilized.
The 3/8 of the Senate is constitutional, so if we raise sales taxes, that automatically goes in. You can't stop that without taking it back out of the Constitution.
So what's it take to take it out?
Probably,
You'd have to do a resolution, which would go through 2 chambers, through 2 general assemblies, and then be put before a vote of the people.
Who 15 years ago said by 2/3 they wanted it.
Right.
But
A
that
lot of
was,
things have changed in 15 years.
Things have changed.
we haven't had an unpopular statement yet. Can I get one?
Go ahead.
So really, the blunt truth, and this is, I don't mean to make anybody mad, the I will constitutional resolution was an example. Please, I ask you for your forgiveness ahead of time. but it was an example of how poor voter referendums are for making policy and spending money. It is hard to emotionally say that you don't want clean water, clean parks, maintain this, but what it was not was a question as to do you want your sales tax increased? So a lot of people who don't want the sales tax increased were like, well, yeah, if we're gonna do it, at least it doesn't go to junk, it'll go to parks and the conservation and water quality, because that all sounds good and feels good. But it put us in a dilemma right now, because they don't want, I don't think most people want their sales tax increased, but we had a lot of folks who would receive money from that, who are lined up to push us to increase the sales tax, who also don't want the sales tax increase, but if we do, they want their 3% in. So I went to a legislative conference here in early December here, where I listened to legislators from other states talk about what happens when you vote, issues on the ballot, and just simple up or down policy issues, and it is tough.
And notice they didn't do it where we're going to raise your sales tax and fund I will. If they done it that way, it would have failed.
Yes.
So they said, well, the next time the sales tax is raised, because if they had put a referendum on to raise the sales tax, it would have failed. So this was a backdoor way to get it done, and now we're all kind of holding it back that are serving the legislature.
Potentially the single largest reason sales taxes haven't increased.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is. So, behind the scenes, and Farm Bureau is way familiar with this, because we've argued about both sides of it, and the cities, we've talked about, and schools, is there was a plan to kind of manipulate the system, where we take away is it save or, I think save, but anyway, it's the local option, one penny. We take that statewide, increase the sales tax to replace it, and then divvy out that additional sales tax penny the same way the old save penny was. So that nobody, really effectively what we do is we trigger I will, affect where that goes, but don't raise anybody's taxes. Because it's a switcheroo. I mean, it's a little bit of switcheroo. Shell game. But it takes this I will problem off our table. Well, the trouble is, legitimately, schools and cities don't trust the legislature to continue giving the money back the way it is right now. And I don't blame them, because there's been episodes in history. I totally don't get it. I totally do get it. So we're stuck. We have a way to fix it, but the people don't trust us to do it. Nobody really wants their sales tax increase. And then, on top of that, the spice on top of that, is some of the, I'm going to say environmental groups, more to the left, they look at this $300 million that they think are suddenly going to be just almost up for grabs. And they're really hungry for that, but we're going to change the formula, essentially, to make sure that water quality, agricultural conservation, all that stuff are more heavily, because that part's all set in law. So it's not going to be a slush fund that people just apply for grants to. So the whole thing is a very dangerous topic that we can't find a resolution to. And I wish we hadn't passed the Constitution on that.
All right, well, we've hit the 11 o'clock hour, so I want to thank everyone for coming. The February legislative coffee will be held at the Farm Bureau, and it's always the third Saturday of the month. And we'll start promoting it in the paper and on the radio a couple weeks before that. But with that, thank you very much for coming, and thank you, gentlemen.